Creative briefs. Doesn't everyone know how to do a creative brief? Actually, I think you'd be surprised. Hi, my name is Wayne Pelletier, and I want to break it down. I want to break down a really simple concept that is actually a pretty difficult thing to accomplish as a service provider, or creative services, really. Any creative services. There's a common document we use in creative services called a creative brief. And that document asks and answers some pretty important questions when it comes to overall campaign success. There are a million versions of a creative brief out there. I'm sure you could go search for a creative brief document and download a great free one. I bet there are documents in Canva. I bet there are there's a version in every course on how to do what, insert name, service, whatever is out there. And as someone who's been a designer, art director, creative director at marketing agencies since 1996, I've seen every different type of creative brief out there, from pedantic, step-by-step, incredibly thorough technical document style to high-level, soft, abstract, strategic style. And I've created my own creative departments inside of agencies and was in charge of what do we want to ask on our creative brief. And all of that isn't necessarily the hard part. The hard part is getting someone to fill it out. It doesn't matter if it was someone in media or account services internally at an agency, or if it was the client. And still to this day, getting someone who is busy and doesn't have all the answers, they know going in they probably don't have all the answers. It's not a document they actually want to fill out. So I tend to not ask anyone to fill out my creative brief. My process, the credibility playbook, includes an onboarding, right? It's called Define Success. And on that kickoff call, when I'm onboarding a new customer, that's when I just ask the questions. And the questions wind up being asked anyway when you're onboarding, whether it is a migration from WordPress into Squarespace where they're being rescued, or it is a net new brand, net new website, starting from scratch. These questions have to be asked. And all I'm going to do here, I know 3 minutes in, is tell you what questions I ask, because it's a mix. I'm not as concerned about some of the more technical aspects. I'm more concerned with their business goals, some broad demographic information, psychographic information, and some competitive space, and more about how I can make the executive that I'm interacting with, normally for me it's the business owner, not always, how I can make them successful. Because customer success for the client is ultimately the goal, but it is not always what we're judged on. A lot of times what we're judged on is whether or not the person we're interacting with finds success in their role. Yes, their customer service and customer success is part of that, but that is not the only part of it. That is not the only reason why they hire a designer or someone to come in and do creative for them. So I got a couple of questions around what that looks like as well. So at a high level, and I'm just going through them. I got the list right here. I'm just going through them. I want to know at a high level, what's the business objective? Like the context of the project, where does it fit in with the broader brand? Sometimes it's an easy question when it's the only part of the brand we have and it needs to be successful. Fine. But sometimes it's a subordinate brand, or what you might call a child or a sister brand or something. And in that case, a sentence about where it fits into the broader scheme of things can be very helpful when it comes to how we approach certain creative choices to make sure that we're incorporating it appropriately in the family of brands. So the business goal might be an open-ended or a basic question, but when you don't ask it and it winds up being important, boy, do you feel terrible like that that's a pretty big miss because it's too easy a question to ask. What is your business goal? It might be sales. It might be add people to my list. It might be we need to gain certain traction with a specific demographic. Like, you don't necessarily know the goal going in is guaranteed to be sales. That's why that's a great question. Now, I ask questions about the customer or their best customer, ideal customer. There are 20 names. Like I've said before on this channel, there are 20 names for that. But in general, the persona or the avatar, whatever it is, the age range, the gender mix, their emotional state when they are at the point of conversion. I want to know what they're trying to get done and why they need your offer. Those are the questions I ask. Age is important because it can help when it comes to selecting photography, especially stock photography. Gender mix certainly can help when it comes to color application in photography and typography to make sure that the brand is aligning right. We may need to steer it one way or another. And certainly, sometimes it's obvious and sometimes the brand is too rigid, but most of the time when you're dealing with small businesses and trying to help them out, the gender mix and the age are really important questions because they haven't always thought that through like a big company has. So it's important to nurture them through that. Now, the emotional state at the point of conversion is important because we need to know from a copy standpoint where urgency fits in. And what they're trying to get done is an important question because it could be project-based. And this is the customer of my customer, right? This is the B2C or the B2B on the other end, the person or the company I'm interacting with, and they've hired me, the people that they need to convert in their business. You know, understanding that motivation goes a long way to knowing how to design something for them, from a layout, typography, copywriting, call to action, urgency, all of those things come into play and are really informed by that line of questioning. And oftentimes when we're asking about what is the motivation of someone that we're asking to convert on that end, it could be incredible urgency and it could be incredibly passive. It could be they need a professional to do something on their home, be it roofing, lawn care, pest control, HVAC, whatever. And they could be in an incredible state of urgency. There could be an actual issue on the property that needs to be taken care of before it rains again or something. So it's important to have an understanding of that. And look, sometimes they're just adding inventory. Like it could be B2B sunscreen and they're running low. It's not a life or death situation. So understanding that goes a long way to knowing how to serve them and how to communicate with them. And then why do they need what you offer is an interesting question. And it's something that I ask that open-ended, and with each of these, and in this case, it's important. There's usually like in parentheses, just one sentence. I don't want 5 paragraphs on why they need what it is that you offer. I need this as concise as possible because it feeds in not just into the motivation and the urgency issues, but why someone needs what it is that you offer could be competitive. It could be market specific. It could be that it's healthcare related and maybe the application isn't known in that way going in. So it's an open-ended question on purpose because sometimes people put in competitive information in there. No, they need to buy from me because I'm better than the market, blah, 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 blah. Awesome. All of that is super input. Love it, need it. And if they skip it, look, it's not a required question, but it is helpful from my standpoint. And then what are their customers' goals? And I've got this written out, like, who do we see? What are their challenges? What are the challenges that the demographics that their target market faces in general when interacting with their industry or their market? Like, why should they care having interacted with the market, why should they care about you or your brand specifically? So it's not just what are they trying to achieve. It's sort of like what have they experienced with your market in the past. So it's important to get a good understanding of the marketplace because there are industries that have a low customer sat, period. Period. And then there are markets that have incredible customer satisfaction. Sorry, I said sat a minute ago. That is so inside baseball. Dang, really outed myself there. Anyway, anybody in here live? Nope. All right, so I ask about their keywords in search, like what are 20 important words that come to mind when they think about how people should feel about the brand, and then what should someone know or see or feel when they interact with the brand. These keywords aren't just for SEO, but they do start informing SEO. They're more for the creative execution. I want consumers to come in and have the appropriate emotional experience when it comes to interact with the brand, because there are different ways to slice and dice that. Here's an example. I've run a lot of landing page tests in the pest control industry. Lawn care, pest control, healthcare, like hair care, tons of markets that I've run. Deep paid search, experimental A/B testing landing pages. And you can do this in several different ways. You can have a landing page for pest control, right, that has dead bugs and grosses people out. You can have one that has someone applying services, like it's being treated, which is like an action outcome, right? Or you can have a photo of in a pristine home with food out with no bugs. And that's more outcome based. So that's why the keywords matter. I need to understand what it is we're trying to achieve emotionally on the site to make sure we're meeting people where they're at. Because if you're running paid search for urgency keywords and the web page doesn't say or look like it relates to a sense of urgency, then that disconnect can affect conversions. And that's not just landing pages. That's one example. It's the whole website. It's the whole brand in general and whatever it is we're creating for them. In my case, it's usually a website on Squarespace by subscription because that's what we sell. All right, so I need to know references. I like to have a few links. These are pretty hard to get, but links to articles that give context to the challenge that help sort of kick off the creative thinking. So it can be an asset that they have in market, like what blog post represents their service offering the best or their products the best, or what reviews have they gotten that represent, them the best. It's almost like asking for references for a job interview, right? It's like, I need third-party validation. So it could be someone on their team that produced a blog post, and I know that's not third party, but it can be more colorful than just talking to a marketing director or the owner of the business saying, well, this is what we're all about. Because what I have found is they're not always right. They don't always know the business, especially as the business gets larger. They start working on talking points because they have a team to guide. The problem with those talking points is they're usually vague, motivational, but not terribly actionable. So that's why any third-party validation, if you've got great reviews on Yelp or Amazon or whatever, that is super helpful. And whether or not you give them to me, I'm going to find them if they're out there. It doesn't take long to run a quick search in Perplexity or DuckDuckGo or whatever to find out this information. So I want to know how you're weighting them and which ones you think are representative positively or negatively so that we can create copy and execute on the creative in a way that helps align appropriately with your best customer and the outcome that they're looking for. The must-haves. Obviously, every creative brief, I know this is counter to what I said at the top, but look, we have to have the binary do's and don'ts of the project. Some brands will be like, never use purple. I know it's in our brand guidelines, but never use this color. Okay, fine. There are also do's and don'ts from a language standpoint. Oftentimes someone will say, we never say click here, or we never position the brand in a way that is scary. I've worked with some brands in the past that do home security, some of the biggest home security brands in the country, like Brinks and some of the others. And they weren't always comfortable using fear, like some burglar in a mask, like knocking on the door. Like, that's pretty scary stuff. And they wanted more positive outcomes. I've worked with pest control companies that just wanted happy families standing on a lawn. They didn't want to see dead bugs. That's fine. However they want to sell, we want to sell. So the must-haves and the must-avoids, do's and don'ts, hard stop, whatever is binary, it's an easy question to ask, usually a great one to answer, and probably the spot in the creative brief where we get the most colorful answers, which is always fun. And then big feels, like if you have a headline for the company, what would it be? Like, if you were really to, and the reason why I say headline is I'd like them to think about news and not just their tagline. They can say, we do XYZ, I said tagline and I went down the positioning statement road. We help ABC do XYZ so they can EFG, whatever. Those things go a long way to helping me understand more about the brand, but they don't always help me understand the customer. And that's why the headline, because often at times when I ask for a headline, like add 3 to 5 words, like a phrase that describes you or describes the brand, then I'm trying to tap into more of customer sentiment. And I find asking headline does more legwork than what's your tagline, which is more company or branding speak. And it may not always be relevant to achieving any level of emotional sort of conversion. I do ask a question about competitors. Who are they? Give me some URLs. What can you say about them? What's their share of the market? What's yours? Sometimes it's relevant, sometimes it's not. What do you like or dislike about their presence? And the reason why I step into this one, and I literally mean step into this one because it's a huge can of worms. A lot of business leaders, owners, marketers have put in requests for me or my companies or my teams in the past to do something exactly the way a customer or a competitor is doing. And I get it. You see something that a competitor is doing, and that's pretty motivational. Like, oh my gosh, I feel like we're missing out. FOMO kicks in and we got to go and do something exactly the way the competitor is doing it. When you don't know their long-term business goals, they could be different than yours. And B, you don't actually know if it's working for them, or, I mean, maybe you do. And maybe it's a good idea to find a way to do that in your own way. But oftentimes the conversation I wind up having is, are you being your best self yet? If you're not being your best self yet, then any energy you're expending to be more like someone else or more like another company, there's a good chance that effort, time, money, whatever it is going to be wasted. So if there's a way to do a better job of delivering or serving or selling our core offer, let's focus on that first instead of doing something that someone else is doing, because we don't know if that's working for them. We don't know why they're doing that at a higher level a lot of the time. So I'm reluctant to, I won't plagiarize, but I'm reluctant to do something inspired by a competitor unless it is an industry standard thing. Like everybody's doing this, right? Like everybody has an about page and nobody calls you a plagiarist because you put an about page on your website. That's the other extreme. So somewhere in between there, if we're having a productive conversation about competitors, then I feel like that's really valuable to understand the marketplace in general. but it is not valuable to do something reactive to the marketplace in detail most of the time. The next one is more open-ended. It's more creative sandbox type of thing. What are the parameters and considerations? This is more like project goals or initiative goals. Like, don't use vague words. I often ask for very specific words. Be clear what it is you're trying to achieve. Why have you come to us? Why are you not going back to the people that served you before? Some of this is relationship based. Some of this is actual deliverable based, and whatever they're going to put in there, any parameters and considerations, open-ended text box, is often going to be something that is a clue or a key to how we can be successful together. And I love this because at the end of the day, their success is the most important thing to me, because it is the most valuable thing my business can deliver and help them achieve. So that's the goal with a question like that. Yes, that question, what are the parameters and considerations, is wide open and vague, but I leave it that way on purpose. Of the 80 or so businesses that my company has served in the past few years, I believe I've gotten about 5 creative briefs filled out voluntarily. It is a low percentage. And that tracks with the success of getting creative briefs done well internally at every agency I've ever been at. Normally, someone will fill it out as a means of checking a box to say that they did, but it was done, I don't want to say disingenuously. It was done in a way that really just forced an in-person meeting. Like, okay, I have to actually ask these questions and extract this information from you. And that's fine. That's why my process here at Resonant Pixel Company is at define the outcome. We get on a kickoff call. I ask these questions, but it's not as sort of cut and dried as that. I don't sit here and say, okay, I've got 10 hard questions for you. I make it conversational. So on the call, they will answer, a lead and or a new customer will answer these questions conversationally if we just guide the conversation through what are their challenges, what are their goals. Oftentimes, I'll have this document up as there, and my fingers are up here doing it, but you can't see them when I'm typing. They'll be talking and I'll be typing, or I'll have my AI note taker app, which right now is Granola. And then afterwards, I will ask it to answer these questions. And it spits it right out. Super good use for AI. Hey, we just did the AI segment. We didn't even know going in we were going to do that. Sweet. All right, that's a creative brief. I'm not going to run back through all 10 of those questions. Just know that whatever questions you ask, you should feel like you have what you need to get to the outcome that you're being asked to achieve. And that's really the goal of a good creative brief. How technical or mechanical you get, that's up to you. Some of the questions that are common that I didn't ask is share your logo files, share your fonts, what are your colors, like brand stuff. Because I ask that passively inside of their Trello board, because every subscriber gets a Trello board. And in there, they'll get an email, follow up to the kickoff call that says, here's your Trello board. And then in the Trello board, it's branding stuff. They can just put that stuff right in there. And oftentimes, if they just email it to me, I'll put it in there. It takes 2 seconds. It's a fast, easy thing to do. So why bother making it some sort of exchange on a call that we have to pause and someone's got to dig through their Dropbox or their Google Drive and try to find fonts they haven't looked for in 3 years. No, not trying to hear that way. So next I want to chat struggle bus. I know I'm running a few minutes longer here. Let me get a wee dram of water, wet my whistle. And struggle bus, I haven't hit this on Monday in a couple of weeks, and I wanted to hit this because I know I don't set goals. I have more directional forces. But there are things throughout the week that I have as objectives that I would like to achieve, to accomplish. And I like the most important thing that I accomplish every week doesn't always happen, which sucks. But I'm only human. So I know that's not unique to me. Look, I've brought on sales assistants, and that has slowed me down. Onboarding 3 new subscribers that we've brought on in the past couple of weeks has slowed me down, and thank goodness they're here. I'm super happy for them. My main objective last week was to move them into the 3rd phase of my process, right? The glow up. And I didn't achieve that. I got 1 there. I got 1 into the 2nd phase, and 1 is spinning a little bit in the 1st phase, mostly because they don't want to use any content from their old website. So that initial creative is a little bit of a more detailed project, we'll say, to get that spinning and that spun up. So that's fine. Everybody knows where they're at. So this week I look forward to actually achieving and finishing all 3 of those and getting those to the point where we feel like we're having a conversation about what we need to do to launch those sites so we can get into the last phase, the last step of the 3rd phase, which is celebrating success. And I can send them my create a whole year of content document and really feel like those businesses are primed for the next phase of their existence. And that is exciting stuff. So, but I don't really feel like I'm stuck on stuff. Like sometimes you have objectives. So maybe this is just me. I have objectives and I feel like there are blockers or I'm stuck on something, and it's not a great feeling. And sometimes those are conversations to get unstuck with someone that maybe you don't want to have, but I don't feel that way. I feel like I'm the bottleneck right now, which is how I prefer it. I can control that. It's just I need to roll up my sleeves, although I'm wearing short sleeves, and get to it and start plowing through the work. And it's a good place to be. I'm excited. I'm excited about this week because I think that is going to be a place where I can move the needle in a meaningful way, and that's pretty motivating. So anyway, that's Struggle Bus. I don't have much else on it other than to check in with those objectives. I'm not changing my objective. I'm just making them a 2-week objective, my previous objectives, which, look, sometimes you got to adapt, improvise, overcome. I think that's the order. So anyway, listen, have a great week. I will talk to you on Wednesday. I'm excited about it. Already I'm excited about it. I think that this week is going to be nuts in a lot of different ways. So keep your head on straight. Keep at it. Keep plowing. And I'll see you at 11 a.m. Wednesday right here. Same time, same bad channel. Oh, thumbnail. Creative brief. I don't want to thumbnail this one. I'm just going to go through and look for a smile and get lucky, okay? I want to be done within 30 minutes. And I have 1.5 minutes to go. So I'm not here to kill time. I will see you Wednesday. Like I said, peace.